A story that really has major implications right here in Washington. President Donald Trump is breaking with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu over the hunger crisis in Gaza.
International pressure is building on Israel as images of starving children evoke global horror and despair. But over the weekend, Netanyahu insisted there is not starvation in Gaza. Yesterday, President Trump disagreed, saying there is real starvation and that the U.S. will create food centers there, though he didn't provide details. Here's what Trump had to say while speaking to U.K. Prime Minister Keir Starmer.
I think before we get to phase two, which is, what's going to happen afterwards, we want to get the children fed. We made a contribution a week ago of $60 million, all going into food. We only hope the food goes to the people that need it.
Now is the Hill's Drew Petrimo. Drew, this is a highly difficult story, and the president has just now made some movement toward addressing what the global community has already said.
Yeah, I don't know that this represents a major break in the relationship between Trump and Netanyahu, but the language they're using to describe the situation in Gaza is certainly different. Netanyahu called it a bold-faced lie, his words, that there was widespread starvation in Gaza. The Israeli military has said visuals coming out of Gaza were fake and part of a campaign, but as you acknowledged, Trump over the weekend saying the images he's seen do show starvation, can't be faked. He does say he wants to get more aid especially into the children of Gaza.
To that point, we have heard from people on the ground, World Central Kitchen led by Chef Jose Andres, who we know and love here in the district. Here's what they had to say. They said access to supplies remains fragile. This most recent cooking pause began last Sunday when we ran out of essential ingredients. During the week, we were able to distribute bread and water. Our ability to continue cooking remains uncertain day to day. We saw over the weekend the airdrops going into Gaza. So really, I guess what the public is seeing is you're saying that there's not starvation in Gaza, yet you are airdropping food into Gaza. Some folks are having difficulty squaring that circle.
Yeah, and there are real questions about the ability for international organizations, Israel and the U.S., to be able to get food into those starving people in Gaza. The UN has traditionally been the supplier of food aid in Gaza through a vast network of partners, but that had been the subject of criticism from both Israel and the United States. So since May, they have been distributing aid through this new organization called the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, but that has been heavily criticized by international organizations for providing insufficient aid. There are fewer distribution sites. There has been violence at some of the distribution sites that we have seen, and it must be noted that there are officials within the Israeli government that view providing food aid as aiding the enemy. So that is an important part of this discussion as well.
And Israel has also made the case that when they do deliver food, there's such chaos there that it's difficult to control, which may have been a reason for some of the violence there. That's the Israeli position on this.
Yeah, and that's a big part of it. This is like, where are the distribution sites? How many are them? Are they actually reaching the people? And if there are fewer sites and there's fewer resources, then the sites that are established become dangerous because they are overrun by desperate people.
So the continued drumbeat, and you and I have talked about this a lot, there's a continued drumbeat in Israel of citizens speaking out against the government and its actions in Gaza. We had multiple Israeli human rights groups saying, yes, Israel is committing genocide here. They have repeatedly called on food aid to be distributed and for a stop to the war and, of course, the release of more hostages. But to Benjamin Netanyahu, he is saying we're going to get to total victory and do whatever it takes to get there.
Yeah, it's a big question, though, is how sustainable is the Israeli policy? We saw France over the weekend say that they would recognize a Palestinian state as a sovereign state. There are reports that the UK is on the verge of making a similar statement. So, again, there is growing pressure internationally on the Israelis to take a different path.
And it will be interesting to see whether or not that makes any difference to Benjamin Netanyahu and his coalition.
All right, we will continue the conversation later this morning, but for now, Drew, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Drew.